Hey there, my name is Pravus. Today we're going to take a look at an indie game called Oxygen. This is a new post-apocalyptic survival city builder that just released as of last April. Apparently there was significant tectonic activity on Earth, and massive gases were released that kind of ruined the Earth's oxygen supply. It's extremely low, and humanity is on the verge of extinction. Can we find a way to survive? Let's go ahead and start up a new game, and I'll show you what this game has to offer. As you can see here, there are a number of different options to change up the difficulty level, including the number of settlers. We can have toxic gases being released from cracks in the earth. The wind is going to be dangerous, etc., etc. All this becomes very important at some point. We also have 5 different maps that we can choose from. And here we are. Alright, so this right here is your oxygen center. This is where we will be producing the vast majority of our oxygen, at least for the start of the game. All of our people down here, as you can see, are in hazmat suits with oxygen tanks, and they will be walking over here to refill whenever they are running a little bit low. At some point, we want to be building that out with new energy sources and new methods of producing oxygen and surviving. But for now, the absolute basics are required. First, let's try to get ourselves some water and stuff. We need to get some water docks over in this direction, for example. This should be fine. We'll place one over there. I'd also love to get myself a fishing dock. We can place these up against the water source right along here, and that should be fine. I'll go ahead and unpause the game. And we'll be able to take a look at some of the builders who come over here, drop off resources, and quickly construct whatever we've got going on. There we go. All right, so those are both set up, and within these different buildings, you can assign a certain number of workers to get over here. So for example, let's assign 3 people to gather up some water, and 2 people to gather up some food, at least for now. We can see up in the top left, by the way, how many people we currently have available, and we can see a breakdown of all the different professions there are in the game, and there actually are quite a few of them, which is always exciting to see. Now, I would also love to get myself some housing set up, so let's go ahead and grab ourselves some simple container houses. I'll set up a couple over in this direction, kind of like so. I think we need maybe 4 to start off. That seems reasonable. And once again, we let the builders get over here and start working on the construction projects. There are children in the game, by the way, who look just like scaled-down versions of the adults. I can't zoom any further than this, so it's kind of hard to tell, by the way.
Thank God we have an oxygen center.
That is amazing voice acting, I'll say that. Thank God we have an oxygen center. Let's take a look at some other stuff that's going on the map. So this right over here, by the way, is one of those cracks that I was talking about in the settings. So this is where you're going to have gases bubbling up from cracks in the Earth's crust that will explode if we do not find ways of extracting it, which we can do, actually. Gas extraction is a good way of generating some power, and I do want to do that at some point, but for right now, it's mostly there just to be a hazard. If you build anything around it, it'll quickly explode, and that's obviously no bueno. We can also see that there are some trees over in various different areas of the world. These are extremely important because they are on the verge of death, but if we can cultivate them, they will start producing some oxygen of their own, which makes sense. That is kind of what plants do. What's going to end up happening is it creates a dome of oxygen around it, which means that trees are actually the perfect thing to be building around as much as you're able to, which is kind of weird because I'm pretty sure most trees don't, develop literal bubbles of oxygen around them, but in this game they do, and I'm going to be cultivating these as soon as I can, using some water and some people to work in the workforce. For now, though, let's go ahead and get some other priorities. I'd like to place down a quick canteen, something like this, which is a place where people will be able to gather up some food from storage and eat in a much more specialized environment. You do have to worry about making your people happy. Oh, there's an explosion, by the way. That's what I'm talking about. You do have to make your people happy. At some point, there can be a vote of no confidence if they feel that you are not leading them to victory and they are going to die under your leadership, or you just haven't made them happy with enough amenities. Well, then you can find yourself losing the game. Now, you might have noticed there are a lot of piles on the ground here, and these are all resources that we are able to scavenge, which is obviously going to be very important for us, and we should be taking advantage of that. I'm looking, there we go, some coal deposits and stuff. I'm looking mostly right now for resources that I will be able to use to create some sources of power, because the more power I have, the more we can have local oxygen generation in each of these little buildings, and people don't have to come here to the oxygen center in order to keep themselves alive. We should at this point be now pretty stabilized for a lot of our early game resources. We've got everyone's housing needs met, we've got our food and water, we've got all that stuff. Okay, so the next thing we need to do is actually start working on ways to get more resources and more energy. And that means we need to go for some technology, so this is where building up a research center becomes very important. The research center, as you might expect, produces some research points we'll be able to spend to unlock new buildings and other technologies. So let's go ahead and assign at least a couple of people to go working over here. I don't think I have any spare workers at this point, which is probably going to be okay for the moment, but at some point I'll need to pull some people off of scavenging jobs to continue my construction projects. And with 15 research points, let's go ahead and click on the research menu and see what we have to offer. Alright, so there are a handful of different special buildings available in the game. The most important at the very beginning for us is going to be the gas extractor for the exact reasons I was talking about. This is going to prevent the explosions that could become very dangerous to us and start producing some much needed power. So let's go to our energy over here, and we can place down a gas extractor in these different areas. So right over here, for example. There we go. All right, a little bit of natural gas, so to speak, is now being collected over in this general area. That's excellent. More places could be gathered up. This one's going to explode a little bit too soon, and I'm not able to place down over here right now because they're already oozing with some lava, and it's kind of hard to be building things on top of lava, though it's not stopping this person from walking across it, so I mean, take that with a grain of salt. But that's completely fine. One thing I could do is assign someone over here to start trying to heal up this tree. Watch that vitality. The vitality is slowly going to be going down if you don't tend to the trees, so you want to be trying to take care of these a little bit early before they do die. Get it up to 80% though, and that's where we get the tree dome. Now, we should at this point be producing a pretty decent amount of power, so what I'm going to do is turn on all localized oxygen generators in their respective buildings. So boom, we can do that. The only problem with doing this is now we are consuming 14 power, and I do not have enough generation in order to make up for all that. I'm only producing about 3. This is where we're going to need to have either a lot of gas extractors, or we're going to need to have some coal mines and coal generators set up. So this may not work everywhere. We may have to turn this off situationally, but if I could turn it on in a couple of different places, that might be helpful. So for example, if you're working in the research center, we'll consume some power, but at least these guys can continue doing their work and they don't have to run over here to refill their oxygen tanks. Basically, it's just a small way of trying to boost up your efficiency so people don't have to take breaks from their jobs quite as often. The problem with gas extractors is they are not permanent. This is only going to last for so long, at least 2 or maybe it was about 16 days, something around there, 15 or 16 days. So it's not a permanent amount of gas. It's something you're just going to have to be keeping an eye on and micromanaging some of these cracks to make sure nothing dangerous happens. Still, it's a good way of getting at least a bit of power at the beginning of the game. And notice, by the way, that this tree is gradually improving once again in its vitality. It does take a while to get up to 80%, so the sooner you can work on this, the better, if that's an option for you. New cracks can appear, like this one just did, and in 2.5 days, that is going to explode on me. So we want to cap this if we can. Those oozes will eventually kind of fix themselves, though. There was one up over here that seems to have corrected itself. So once it's exploded, it's just going to continue being a nuisance for you for a while until it kind of naturally burns itself out and ceases to be a problem. So don't worry too much if these pop up. It's not like it's going to be a permanent problem. It's just something you got to deal with, at least temporarily. Now, let's talk about something here called the vote of confidence. If you take a look down here in the bottom left, we can see that there are people who have certain needs, right? So the vote of confidence right now is looking pretty good for me. If we were to have a vote of confidence in the next few days, we should be more or less okay, but we need to make sure that people are generally happy with us. We want to have extra points for extra newborn babies and stuff like that. We want to do some exploration by getting a radar. We want to build certain buildings and recreational things, etc. And the more trees we have, generally the more confident people are going to feel about our ability to survive in the future. If you want to construct some more buildings, under the community section over here, you can get things like, let's say, medical posts and stuff like that. All of this is helpful. Temples, cafe, cemetery, etc. We can also do decorations, you know, get ourselves like a giant star, this big thing right over here. And if people can visit it, then that means their recreation need is met and their confidence goes up. Now, you might be wondering, how do we get more people into our colony? Well, there is a method of doing that. We need to be getting ourselves a submarine dock. Yep, you heard me right. Submarines, using these rivers along over here. This is how we can drop off new people into our colony. So we want to place something like this down over here. And there we go. Okay, so the submarine dock is here. Periodically, there will be submarines that come by, and that's how we'll get more people. Let's pull off the research for a moment, because now we can get ourselves the coal mine, and that is something I know that I'm going to need. Note, by the way, that if you pick up some of these, you can see on the right, for example, this will lead to other types of buildings. So if we get the coal mine, we can lead to metal processing, and we can get things like quarries at some point as well. Nonetheless, coal seems the most important, so let's take care of that. So here's a quick coal mine set up. We're going to go ahead and have somebody start working in there and produce a little bit of coal. I'm going to turn on the oxygen since it's further away, and I feel like that's going to be helpful to make sure that people keep working. So now it's draining a small amount of power, but we are turning that coal directly into energy, so we should be actually making a net profit right now, even with only one worker. Oh, and we can actually see down here in the submarine dock that a submarine is arriving in 2.7 days, and 4 more people are going to be joining me. Cool. We should probably get ourselves some additional housing then. I'm going to go ahead and build up a medical post over here as well. I don't need it at the moment, but you never know. Sometimes people are going to be getting sick, and you're going to wish you had a medical post in place. It's kind of one of those things where I'd rather build it and not need it than find out that I need it and I don't have it, if that makes sense. I'm going to be deliberately placing some things around this tree, though, because if I can get this up to 80%, I want that oxygen dome. It just means I don't have to worry as much about our oxygen. It makes a lot of sense. So we'll preemptively start building in a big circle around this thing. You may notice, by the way, that new tasks are occasionally popping up. You should pretty much try to do these wherever you can, because you get free resources for doing so. And also, by completing them, you do get some additional confidence down here, which we're going to need. You can see that we need to get level 5 confidence within the next 27 days, which seems like plenty of time, but it can sneak up on you. So taking on these tasks gives you just a little bit of extra happiness with your people. Fortunately, I'm just a little bit ahead of the game already. I've got my coal mine, I've got my medical post. Now all I need to do is gather up my coal a little bit faster. All right, but we do have some issues with weather. Okay, so this being a post-apocalyptic world, it's not surprising that the elements are trying to kill us all dead. Over here, you can see that the winds are coming in. It brings in more toxic gases, and as a result, the oxygen levels go down, people can get sick, and of course, the energy consumption is going to have to go up because we have to produce more oxygen to make up for what is being blown away and replace with toxic gas. So this is kind of, the hard mode. You need to be prepared for this. This is why the game is saying you want to have things like a medical post and coal, which all makes sense. They're absolutely correct on those points. And look, it's a little summary. Oh, it's gone. I'm just going to whoop, hello, bye-bye, poof. All right, cool. Well, 4 more people are going to join the colony. Hooray! Oh, here we go. Bubble. Take a look at that. The tree has reached 80% vitality, and now we get this little oxygen bubble over here. So in this area, we should find that we are now able to remove our energy consumption here entirely because it's under a tree dome. Hooray! No oxygen production issues over here. And here come those nasty, nasty winds. We're about to see everything get a lot worse all of a sudden. Okay, the oxygen center is having to work a heck of a lot harder. And we're going to be seeing our energy production drop. Now, this menu right here is showing a daily status, right? So at the beginning of every day, it resets and it kind of tracks how much you've consumed that day and how much you produced that day. It's not really predictive in the sense that it's saying how much you're actually producing right now. It says 30 production. That's not how much we're producing per day. That's how much we produced so far today and so on. So as long as you check this and it's always in the green, you're going to be in a good spot. And right now, even with the winds being what they are, we're looking kind of okay. Although that said, I mean, I don't know, they're just kind of now taking in full effect. So, I mean, no, we're still staying in the green. That's all right. That's okay. I am, however, very concerned about things like food and stuff. We are not producing enough of that. And the same is true with water. Water being a problem mostly because if you are tending to trees, then, yeah, it's going to consume more. That's just how it goes. Oh, and some people are sick. Okay, we need to pull off a few workers from other places. Let's say we're going to stop scavenging for a little bit. Get some people over to the medical post, and let's make sure that we are keeping everyone alive. Losing anyone right now would actually be very, very painful. Okay, now 7 people are sick. Right. Okay. Let's pull back on a whole bunch of different things, because so far all my workers who were going to the medical post suddenly have gotten sick. There we go. All right, now we're treating 5 of these people. All right, that's looking a little bit better. Hold up. We just got to survive this for a little bit longer. Come on, wind, go away already. Thank you. All right, now we're in a much better spot. Yeah, it kind of reminds me of some of the disasters you find in games like, let's say, Surviving Mars. Same kind of concept really does apply. You find yourself in a position where you're trying to constantly stockpile the resources you need to react whenever those emergencies do suddenly and unexpectedly come your way. And if you have not built up some sort of a stockpile, well, you're probably about to be in for a very bad time. Let's go ahead and unlock that metal processing, by the way. This takes a bit of metal and some stone, but if we can find ourselves a metal deposit, and I do know that some exist, we'll be able to gather up a better source of metal. So right over here, for example, is where I want to go. Let's go to resources and place one of these things down. We'll assign a couple of people over here to work on metal processing. It is going to consume a bit of power if we want to turn on oxygen, but it doesn't seem like a bad idea to do things like that. If only I could have a little bit more power production. What we could do is start mining out even more coal, and as long as we stay on top of that, that seems reasonable. We are having some food issues. I'm probably gonna have to get myself another one of these fishing docks. Not great, but, you know, it's okay. Population's growing enough that we have to just keep focusing a bit on some food. Don't do that, and, well, bad things are gonna happen, obviously. No energy left at this gas extractor, so we can go ahead and salvage this, regain some of our materials. You know, the funny thing is, I'm naturally kind of responding to problems as I see them in the game, which actually coincides very well with the task system that's already being set up. Like, these are an intelligent set of tasks, you know? I was just now reaching a point of having problems with food and water, and what happens? A task that says, hey, by now in this point in the game, you should probably be building up a second water purifier and dock. And here comes yet another round of the winds. It's only gonna last for 1 day though, so it's pretty short all in all. Now the game would like me to go ahead and plant down a tree, and I am in no way opposed to this idea because extra trees obviously would mean extra oxygen protection for me. So I can keep some of these buildings operating a fair bit longer. And we'll go ahead and have to assign somebody over here to this tree, which will protect these houses, as well as this fishing dock and stuff once it is up to 80%, which is going to take a bit of investment. Biggest issue here is you really do need a lot of water production in order to keep up with this many trees, which can be a bit of a problem. And actually, I don't even see a point in trying to maintain trees in areas that are far away from where you want. You can plant it again, but it starts its vitality at 50%, which is better than the 28% I've got now. So, like, why try to maintain this cedar tree if I could just get rid of it, and I'll be able to plant it down elsewhere wherever I would actually benefit from it later. But I do have a drought on the way. It's going to be here in 3 days. When that happens, all the water dries up, which means no water and no fish. Obviously a bit of a problem, so the game does want me to automatically start gathering up as much of this as I can in the meantime, which, yeah, makes sense. We want to have a nice, healthy stockpile. I can pull back a bit on energy production, for example, and try to build up my water stores just a little bit more. Why do I have so many people working in the medical storage area anymore? I don't need that. Let's continue working mostly on things like water, I think, and maybe a bit of extra metal. Now, if you find yourself in the wonderful position where you actually have some excess workers and your needs are basically being met, then it's not a bad idea to go ahead and get yourself an extra research center and start generating a little bit science a little bit faster. Because the next thing the game wants me to work on is a signal tower, which is a way of trying to send out signals to survivors across the globe. I need a lot of metal planks, gears, and plastic to make this thing work. And here comes the drought. All right, the water levels have dropped, so we can go ahead and pull off all of our workers on fish and water and start gathering up, like, let's say, literally anything else for a while. More science, more scavenging, more everything. And do we want to go ahead and construct this signal tower? Honestly, yeah, if I can. I'd like to place it kind of close to a tree because this does consume a lot of power. So if we can have it by where there will be a tree dome, then that should save me quite a lot as well. I like how these guys are using pickaxes on these tires over here. I don't think you guys understand how tire works. You really don't need to mine them to get plastic. That's fine, though. And the rains come back once again. All right, rebalance, get ourselves some food and some water production, and we'll be fine. Just about done with that signal tower, and there it is. All right, we get quite a lot of confidence out of some folks, some bricks, some canned fish, water, blah, blah, blah. All of which is going to be great. And now we could assign some people over here if we so desire, with which we can go ahead and use a signal tower and try to find things on a big map. Now we are getting very close to our vote for confidence to make sure that we continue the game. It's actually very important that I continue keeping some of these trees at 100% vitality if I want to stay above level 5. If I drop this down to 99, we're going to be below 4, or at least down to 4 points, and that might be a problem for me. So even though it is going to cost me a lot of resources and an entire person just maintaining a tree that's already at maximum vitality, and we don't get anything extra for being above 80% vitality, we need to keep it, because that's the only way that I stay in the game. And that's another tree that is up to 80% vitality, which means we are now protecting some extra stuff over here. Interestingly enough, is this a smaller bubble? Actually, maybe there is a reason to keep this up to 100%. I didn't realize this. Oh, interesting. Yeah, it looks like at 80% you do create a bubble, but it grows, I think, the closer to 100% you get, which is why these buildings, this fishing dock and this signal tower, were going to be within range, but they're not right now, so I guess I have to keep focusing on this. Interesting. Now, if I really want to shore up people's votes, then a few things I can do to make people happy would include building some nice recreational structures, or at least start working down some technologies that are going to make me more efficient, because we haven't talked about this yet, besides the special buildings over here, and we do need these for the most part, but as you can see, we could do things like, for example, boost up our fish and water production, or better metal processing, etc. And every one of these is going to be helpful in some way. There's easy, medium, and hard technologies. We'll have to spend a certain amount of research points just to unlock the next tier of many, many additional upgrades. And this is one of the more interesting parts of the game, in my opinion, in that there is a lot of different stuff that you can research. So if you want to focus heavily into technology, it's a very, very smart thing to do. That said, there's a lot of just sort of sitting around and waiting for your resources to stockpile or for the next thing to come and kind of hit you. So, I don't know, there's a lot of downtime if you're going to go for a research-heavy build. But you kind of have to, honestly. At some point, we're going to scale up so large that it's the only way that we're going to stay alive and competitive. Anyway, let's go ahead and build up a cafe. Where could I place this? I could place one under the dome right over here. This does, at the very least, meet most of my housing, so sure, this seems like a good spot for a cafe. And once again, here come the winds. Okay. Well, we know what that means. Go ahead and preemptively stop producing things like metal and a little less technology. Go ahead and toss everybody into the medical post, because you know some folks are about to get sick from all those volcanic toxic gases. The good news is, as a rule, we seem to be very, very good at producing enough energy, so I'm not really feeling too threatened on that front. We are producing plenty of this stuff thanks to the coal mines. And confirmed, by the way, the bubble of around this tree is going up, because now the fishing dock and the signal tower are covered as well. Perfect. And there's the cafe, by the way. Does not require anyone to work over here, which I think is interesting, but it is going to make everyone around here a lot happier. Now, as our population continues to grow and I can finally start focusing more and more on some science, let's go ahead and toss a lot more people in over here. Got one extra worker available at the moment. You know what I'm going to do is I do want this tree to provide a bubble around my research center so they can work pretty much non-stop, but this thing's below 20% vitality, so I'm going to go ahead and remove the tree and then simply plant it right back in the exact same spot, and that just saved me 30% vitality, and now we can assign someone to work here, and it's going to be ready to go a little bit faster. Kind of a cheesy thing to do. Honestly, doesn't make a whole lot of sense from a gameplay perspective, but it works. And here we go. The first annual report. We have survived a year. All right, so we have managed to achieve the vote of confidence, so we are still going. 20 people joined with the help of the signal tower and the submarine dock. In total in the last year, we had 3 babies and then 5 people died. I didn't even know anybody died. I guess that is true. We could have been looking at the event log down over here. But for the most part, it looks like we were doing completely fine, so no problem. At some point, though, as you can kind of surmise, this signal tower is going to be able to start discovering various different things in the world, which is kind of exciting. Let's go ahead and assign a couple of different people over here, actually, and they can start looking for some various different waypoints. And we can also finally get ourselves the plant house. Let's go ahead and do this now, because that is something that people have requested for a task. I would actually have preferred to spend some of my science getting things like better water and fish production, but okay, this is what they are asking for, but at least now we're going to have another source of food, which is great since a frost is currently on the way, and it would be very, very nice to be able to produce some different types of food. And we should note that my vote of confidence has boosted up to level 6, in part because I have another tree set to 100% vitality, and we have a total of 36 days in between each of these. I think every day is supposed to represent like 10-ish, about 10 real-life days, and hence why it's about a full year if you can survive for the full 36 in here. So we're looking pretty good on our way toward getting to level 7, but the game continues to ramp up in expectations and in some difficulty. And realistically, we barely scratched the surface here. I'm going to be ending up this video, but you can see that there's a lot more that we need to research. There's a lot of things we could do, like research, let's say, playgrounds and stuff. We can get ourselves lots of different food. We'll eventually be able to start getting some kitchens and produce French fries. That's apparently something people really want. There's some cemeteries down that way, schools, water desalinators, yeah. And as you can see from production, there are plenty of different jobs. So right now, the biggest issue probably with the game is just going to come down to, and you've heard me say this before, but I'll say it again, pacing. Pacing in this game is a little bit difficult because you do sometimes sort of have to sit around and wait. For the most part, I think we're doing really, really well, right? Like, we've actually managed to produce plenty of food and water and energy and stuff. Like, all of our basics are taken care of. But we're mostly just stuck sitting around and waiting for research to continue boosting up, and also for trees to finish reaching their 100% vitality. And aside of building like a whole bunch more research centers, there's really not much more I can do to try and speed this up than I already have. And we are able to survive most of these disasters pretty well. So I don't know. I think the game is pretty interesting in the sense that it does have a lot of very interesting options. It kind of plays upon themes we've seen before with the post-apocalyptic city builder. It kind of falls into that same niche where you have environmental disasters coming after you and stuff. But it does execute it at least reasonably well, I think. The tree domes I have a hard time really accepting, just because it's a very, very bizarre way of representing oxygen production, because this is completely untethered from any sort of reality. One tree like this is not going to sustain an area like this. It just doesn't work. It'd be actually even more interesting to me if people actually built out things like glass domes, kind of more like Surviving Mars, right? But that's not the direction this game decided to go for. That said, you know, I think that it's got some potential. If this is the kind of game that you guys are interested in, then you certainly can find a link in the description down below, and I would advise you to take a look. There is a demo. One of the cool things I will say about this particular developer is they do include demos for all of their games. And I believe that for Oxygen, it includes like the first 50 days. So everything you've seen me do so far, and then a bit more, is what you would have access to for free, and from there you can make an educated decision as to whether or not this is the kind of game that you're going to want to be playing yourself in the future. So I would advise you take a look at that. There's going to be a link in the description down below. Thank you all very much for watching. Hope you enjoyed. If so, I would ask you to hit that like button, leave a comment, subscribe, make sure you hit that notify bell, and I will see you guys next time.